Okay, so here we have Visual Studios open, and we want to make a new project. So go to File, New Project. Takes a minute to load, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna pick a Windows Forms application, and I'm gonna call it Game 1. And we can save it wherever. You can browse to where you want to save it. I'm just going to go ahead and use the default for this. I'm going to go ahead and create a new solution. There's other options available. You can add it to a previous solution. You can create a new instance. My solution name can be different than the name of the project. Target.net framework, you have a little bit of options there. If you want to run it on an older machine, you can use one of these older ones, but if you want to use the latest, greatest libraries, you can use one of the newer ones. For something simple like what we're doing, it doesn't really matter. I do recommend that you have this checked to create the directory for the solution, so that it keeps things organized and whatnot. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control, and it'll go ahead and set up all the defaults for my Windows program. Now, C# is an object-oriented language. Everything done in C# is object-oriented. You start with an object. You have to be in an object to do anything. And objects are full of classes. So here I've got my form that pops up. And I'll go ahead and reduce the size. I changed the resolution on my screen so it's easier to see what I'm typing and whatnot. But this form right here is my main window, my main class that I'm working in, my object. But if I want the Solution Explorer. I really like this interface that Visual Studios has, being able to dock things like that. So if I look at what's generated right here in my Solution Explorer, you got a properties window that describes basic properties of the project. You got a list of references that basically tells the program what libraries need to be included. And for this simple project, this is probably adequate. I've got a config file that it automatically generates. Just, again, basic settings. For this project, I won't need to dive into it. I get a program.cs that auto-generates, and this right here is the starting point of my program. The starting class of my program. This right here, the static void main, is the entry point. So if I were to run my project that I just built, I can go to, I'm going to put a breakpoint in here so it'll stop right on that line. If I go to debug and start debugging, you can also use the F5 key to start debugging. It will run the project, and the very first thing that it does is going to go ahead and compile it, and it takes a minute sometimes. Faster computers do this faster. Mine's a little bit older, so it takes a little bit of time. But it's going to go ahead and build the project, and then it'll start debugging, and it should hit that breakpoint that I just set. And that executes before anything else because that's the starting point of the program. And boom, right there, it stopped right there. And if I were to hit F5 again, it would continue running the program. Some shortcut keys for debugging. You got F10. If I hit F10, it's a step over command. And so if I hit F10 again, then since there's basically a procedure, a function call, a method, is a proper terminology for object-oriented languages, that doesn't return, then I get kind of stuck in my program right here, and I'm not sure where the execution's at. If I close this form, that returns from the method call, and I'm back to the end of my program. And if I hit F10 again, then it'll go ahead and do the cleanup and close down. So I'm going to go ahead and start it again. The next debugging troubleshooting that I think you ought to be aware of, F5 is important, F10 is important. I'll go ahead and step over that one, and I'm going to hit F11 this time, which is step into, which jumps me into my class itself. As you can see, I switched files. I was originally in this program.cs file, and now I am in Form Designer, this file, Form Designer. You can see it says partial class Form 1. What that means is that I've got part of my code for the Form 1 class in one place, and it tells the compiler that I'm anticipating I'm going to put more code for that file in another, or more code for that class in another place, possibly another file. The way Visual Studio does it by default, there are a couple of different files that represent a form. Typically, it's not a very good idea to directly edit this designer file. And Visual Studios is very particular about the format of this file, and if you goof up this format, then when you're in the designer mode, it doesn't show anything, it shows an error window. So be very careful if you're going to directly edit this file. Usually when I'm myself am editing it, I'm just deleting references and stuff like that. I thought I needed, but then all of a sudden I realized I didn't. So yeah, just be very careful about direct editing this file. So I'm going to go ahead and step over some stuff. So it hits that first. Then this is the other file I was talking about. I have the form1.cs design, and then this is form1.cs. So this function right here is called a constructor. The format for a constructor is you have a public, like you see right here. There's other modifiers. There's a private modifier, which basically means that only this class can reference it. Since we want to let the program or anything build a Form 1, then we're going to go ahead and set it to public. It's best in this instance, but just keep in mind that there are other modifiers right here that tell the compiler what can reference and what can't. And so if I step in, You notice that this is all the code that's currently in this file. This is everything that Windows auto-generated, and it's very short right now. All the real work is being done in this initialize components method. If I step into that, I'm jumping back to the first file, the form1.designer, and this is where Visual Studios puts all the code for building this form. So I've got a suspend layout that basically says that I don't want to draw any of the changes that I'm making until I'm done. So it suspends the layout. It scales it, changes the size, changes the name, changes the text. And it goes ahead and unpauses the layout so that you can see what's going on, and steps out, and boom, now we should have our form. So that's step one for the basic generation of a Windows form application, and some little details. That's what you get by default. Join me in video 2 for a little bit of modifying of this form.